The world finds ways to test those who dream big. And for Dwayne Johnson, there was no smooth ride to fame. Before being The Rock, the favorite Hollywood icon, he was nothing but a small boy from a struggling family who had nothing other than ambition and a heart full of hope. Dwayne's story began in the small, modest apartment he shared with his parents in Hawaii. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a professional wrestler who spent most of his time on the road, while his mother, Ada, held the family together despite financial struggles. As a teenager, Dwayne watched his parents work tirelessly to make ends meet, often sacrificing their own needs to ensure he had a shot at a better life. Life was, however, not fair to him. Dwayne remembered seeing at age 14 when his family got evicted from their house. He would remember the day because of how it embarrassed him and left him powerless. For the first time in his life, he found that success isn't easily distributed. One needs to work for it. Dwayne was a natural athlete from a young age. Tall and muscular, he quickly found his passion in football. For him, football was not just a sport, it was a ticket out of poverty. By the time he reached high school, his talent on the field was undeniable. College scouts soon took notice, and he was offered a full scholarship to the University of Miami. A dream come true. But life had other plans. In his second year, Dwayne suffered a devastating shoulder injury during a practice game. The injury sidelined him for the season, and with it, his dreams of making it to the NFL began to crumble. Sitting on the sidelines, watching his teammates thrive, Dwayne felt like his world was falling apart. Months turned into years, and despite his efforts to recover, the NFL draft came and went without his name being called. At 23 years old, he found himself living in his parents' small apartment in Tampa, Florida, with just $7 in his pocket and no clear direction in life. Dwayne started fighting feelings of worthlessness. The world was ridiculing him because of his failures. People who used to admire him as a rising star were now pitying him. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, wondering where he had gone wrong. One evening, sitting in the dimly lit living room of his parents' home, Dwayne sat as his mother put a hand on his shoulder. "You have faced setbacks, son, but setbacks are just setups for comebacks," she said, with a warmth that broke through his despair. Her words resonated, but Dwayne couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. "Mom, I've failed. Football was my only way out, and now it's gone," he replied, his voice heavy with defeat. Ada knelt beside him, her eyes full of relentless determination. "Dwayne, your life isn't defined by one dream," she said to him. "You are destined for something greater. You just have to find it. Remember, failure is not falling down, but staying down." Those words stayed with Dwayne, even though he wasn't sure yet how to live them. The days turned into weeks as he struggled to get his footing again. He found odd jobs for survival. He cleaned gyms, unloaded trucks, and sometimes even washed dishes. Each job stung him to remind him of just how far down he had come, but with each job he learned humility and resilience. One day at the gym, Dwayne was approached by an old friend of his father's, a wrestling promoter. "Why don't you give wrestling a shot?" the man said. "You've got the size, the look, and the charisma. People would love you. Wrestling." He had always considered it a fleeting thought, but always dismissed it. It was his father's dream, not his. Now that he had lost everything else, he felt there was no point in leaving that dream too. The first time Dwayne ever wrestled, it was nothing familiar. There was nothing more exciting than bright lights and the roaring crowd, choreographed moves with no ball to be seen at a football stadium. But after weeks of wrestling, he developed his timing. Dwayne began to use wrestling as an activity to relieve frustration and anger. But the way to the top was still arduous. He began by working in regional promotions, appearing before microscopic crowds for pittances. The wrestling fraternity wasn't friendly to newcomers, and Dwayne got his share of flack. Fans booed him, saying he was a wannabe and a loser, but each insult became a catalyst to his will. He recalled what his mother told him. setbacks are just setups for comebacks. One night, after a particularly humiliating match, Dwayne stood alone in the locker room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His face was bruised, and his body ached, but his spirit refused to break. "This isn't where my story ends," he whispered to himself. "This is just the beginning." As Dwayne continued to wrestle for small promotions, he started feeling something inside himself change. Whether he won or lost, the matches became the stepping stones into something more with each passing encounter. He began to find his voice, identity, and sense of purpose in this wrestling world slowly but surely. But the path wasn't linear. Every success seemed to be followed by a setback. There were nights he didn't have enough money for a proper meal. There were days he doubted whether he could endure the physical toll of wrestling. And there were countless moments when the pressure to live up to his father's legacy felt unbearable. One night, after a particularly brutal match in a rundown venue, Dwayne sat on the curb outside the arena. The crowd had long gone, the lights were dim, and the streets were eerily quiet. He stared at the crumpled $40 check in his hand, his payment for the night. It wasn't much, but it was something. As he sat there, lost in thought, an old man who had been part of the audience approached him. The man was dressed in worn-out clothes, but had a kind face. He extended his hand to Dwayne. "You were great out there," he said. Dwayne looked up, surprised. "Thanks," he muttered, unsure of what else to say. "You know," the man continued, "I've been watching wrestling for decades, seen the best of them. But what I saw in you tonight, it wasn't just strength or skill. It was heart. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Those words echoed through Dwayne's mind even when the man had disappeared. It reminded him why he wrestled in the first place, not just for making a living, but to prove it all to himself and the rest of the world, that he is more than what his failures defined him as. Over the next few months, Dwayne threw himself into his training. He spent hours perfecting his moves, studying the art of storytelling in the ring, and working on his charisma. He realized that wrestling wasn't just about physical prowess. It was about connecting with the audience, making them feel something. His dedication didn't go unnoticed. One day, he received a call from the World Wrestling Federation, the biggest wrestling organization in the world at the time. They were offering him a chance to join their roster, a dream opportunity. But the transition wasn't smooth. When Dwayne debuted in the WWF under the name Rocky Maivia, a tribute to his father and grandfather, he was met with mixed reactions. Fans criticized his overly cheerful persona, and chants of "Die, Rocky, die" echoed through the arenas. It was a harsh reality check. For the first time in years, Dwayne started wondering whether he made the right choice. Instead of throwing in the towel, however, he chose to take his own story back. He pitched his idea of revamping himself to the creative team at WWF. Thus, The Rock was born, a cocky, charismatic, and unapologetically confident persona that quickly resonated with fans. The transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. Within months, The Rock became one of the most electrifying figures in sports entertainment. As the first chapter closes, we find Dwayne standing in the center of a jam-packed arena. The crowd is chanting his name, the lights are blinding, and the energy is electric. In that moment, he realizes that every failure, every setback, and every tear was worth it. Looking out at the sea of faces, he thinks back to the days when he had only $7 in his pocket. And as he raises his championship belt above his head, he whispers to himself, "This is just the beginning." The roar of the crowd became a familiar sound to Dwayne Johnson, now known universally as The Rock. With every match, every electrifying promo, and every championship victory, he carved his place in the annals of wrestling history. But as the cheers grew louder and the spotlight brighter, Dwayne found himself grappling with a new question. What comes next? Great success in wrestling had brought him wealth, fame, and admiration. Yet at night, after the adrenaline waned and people went home and emptied the arenas, he stared at the ceiling. Was all this all he was meant to be? Was it a wrestler? Was it a character? Or was something else there for him? One rainy evening, after a final match, he found himself alone in the locker room. The championship belt lay by his side, yet his eyes were far away. He had been punished, battered, and bruised for years, but now his mind, too, was befuddled with uncertainty. The door creaked open, and his mother, Ada, stepped inside. She had come to catch a glimpse of him playing as her schedule, between charitable works, hardly left any free time to spare for games. Sitting beside him, she placed her hand on his shoulder. "You were amazing out there tonight," she began with a proud smile. "Thanks, Mom," he replied, though in a less effervescent tone. Ada studied her son for a moment. "What's on your mind, son? You've got everything you worked so hard for. Why does it feel like you're carrying the weight of the world?" Dwayne sighed deeply. "I don't know, Mom. I thought winning, being the best, would be enough. But something's missing. I feel like I'm meant to do more. To be more. But I don't know what that is." Ada's eyes softened. "Dwayne, your story is not about you. It's about every person you're inspiring along the way. Maybe it's time you quit running after titles and started writing a legacy that lasts beyond the ring." Her words resonated. That night, as Dwayne reflected on his journey, he realized that his mother was right. Wrestling had given him a platform, but it was up to him to decide how to use it. It was not easy to transition from wrestling to acting. Dwayne faced skepticism from Hollywood executives who doubted his ability to transition from the ring to the big screen. His early roles were small and often met with mixed reviews. Critics labeled him as just another athlete trying to cash in on his fame. But Dwayne was no stranger to doubt or criticism. He approached acting with the same determination and work ethic that had fueled his wrestling career. He took acting classes, studied scripts meticulously, and sought advice from seasoned actors. Slowly but surely, he began to find his footing. His breakthrough came in the movie The Scorpion King, which showcased his charisma and the undeniable screen presence that he possesses. Although the movie was not much of a critical masterpiece, it was the starting point for the new beginnings Dwayne needed. As his career in Hollywood picked up pace, Dwayne started to see the power of storytelling on a global scale. Films like Fast and Furious and Jumanji not only cemented his status as a box office powerhouse, but also allowed him to reach millions of people worldwide. But for Dwayne, fame and fortune weren't enough. He wanted to give back, using his success to uplift others. Inspired by his mother's charitable work, he founded the Dwayne Johnson Rock Foundation, which focused on children battling illness and those from underprivileged backgrounds. One of the foundation's first major projects was building a state-of-the-art recreation center in his hometown of Hawaii. The center provided a safe space for kids to play, learn, and dream. During the grand opening ceremony, Dwayne spoke from the heart. "When I was a kid, I didn't have much. But I had people who believed in me. This center isn't just a building. It's a promise to every child out there that they're not alone, that their dreams matter, and that no matter how tough life gets, they can rise above it." The crowd clapped. But for Dwayne, the most profound response was the moment when a boy, barely older than 10 years old, went up to him after the session. "Because of you, I want to be strong too," he said to Dwayne while gazing up with wide eyes. Tears welled up in Dwayne's eyes. He realized at that moment what success was all about. It was not about what you achieved, but about how your achievements could inspire others. Years went by, and Dwayne's influence kept growing. He became more than a wrestler or an actor. He became a symbol of perseverance, resilience, and kindness. From motivational speeches at schools to surprise visits to children's hospitals, he used every opportunity to spread positivity. However, one of the most defining moments of his journey was when he was invited to give a keynote speech at a global leadership summit. Standing before an audience of leaders and world leaders, entrepreneurs and changemakers, Dwayne shared his story of struggles, failures, and turning points that shaped him. "You see," he began, "life isn't about never falling. It's about learning how to rise every time you do. I've been at rock bottom more times than I can count. I've been broke, I've been lost, and I've been doubted. But every setback was a setup for something greater. Turning points aren't the end. They're the beginning of a new chapter, a chance to redefine who you are and what you stand for. And if my journey can teach you anything, it's this. No matter where you come from, no matter how tough life gets, you have the power to rise above it." The room stood up in a thunderous ovation, but Dwayne was most concerned with the people he inspired. As he set his legacy, he knew it wasn't in the titles or movies he wanted in. It was in the lives he touched. So, on the balcony of his home, overlooking the ocean, Dwayne stands as testament to resilience, hard work, and kindness in one's life. In his hands, he holds a framed picture of his younger self, a reminder of how far he has come. Looking out at the horizon, he smiles and whispers, "This isn't the end. It's just another beginning."